Rocks are a fundamental part of our everyday lives on this planet we call Earth. They can be used for a variety of functions such as building, climbing on, and bludgeoning people to death. It is for these reasons that I've compiled this rock iceberg. Let's get into it. If you like this video, make sure to hit the like and subscribe so you can get more autistic content like this. Rocks. First off, let's define our terms. A rock is a solid mass of fused minerals. According to that definition, this list will contain anything that is now a mineral, even if that thing was at one point not a mineral. For example, a fossil. You can say, oh, this thing still has organic matter, so it's technically not. I don't want to hear it. It's a damn rock. There are three types of rock: igneous, which is solidified magma; sedimentary, which is formed by loose particles deposited by forces such as wind and water and subsequently buried and compacted; and metamorphic, which is rock that gets crazy under heat and pressure, but doesn't heat up so much that it starts melting into magma. Boulder. The official definition of a boulder in geology is a rock that is larger than 25.6 centimeters or 10.1 inches in diameter. No idea why they chose that size. Honestly, it seems pretty small, but I guess a rock that size would still be really hefty. Like, you could definitely bludgeon someone to death with that. Anyway, I never knew that. It definitely made my week to solve the mystery of when does a rock become a boulder. So yeah, tell everyone you know so we can make this information more known. Moon. I'm gonna take the liberty of blowing through the arbitrary stuff so we can get to the good stuff sooner. The moon is a large rock that orbits our planet. It looks pretty close, but it's actually hella far away. 238,854 miles to be exact. About 30 Earth lengths away. The main theory of its formation was that a Mars-sized body known as Theia crashed into the proto-Earth early in our solar system's history, ejecting debris that eventually accumulated due to the force of gravity. Pyramids of Giza. One of the 7 ancient wonders of the world and the only one that still exists. The Pyramids of Giza were built between 26,000 and 25,000 BC in the Old Kingdom of ancient Egypt. A lot of attention has been given to how the pyramids could have been constructed, and nobody still really seems to know. They had no pulleys, no wheels, and no iron tools, but somehow were able to both lift the stones to their proper places, some of which weighed up to 80 tons, and also cut and level them so precisely that it's comparable to modern laser leveling. For example, the entire 13-acre base of the Great Pyramid Khufu was leveled within a fraction of an inch using apparently only basic Bronze Age tools. Naturally, this leads to conspiracy theories that aliens crafted the architecture and I guess beamed the stones into place. The most commonly accepted theory is that they were just incredibly skilled craftsmen who used a still unknown method, potentially a ramp or a levering system, to raise the stones. 10 Commandments. 2 stone tablets inscribed with the primary 10 laws of God for the nation of Israel. According to the Bible, the original set was smashed by Moses after the people made for themselves a golden idol while he was up on Mount Sinai getting the commandments from God. Way to go, buddy. So another set was recrafted by Moses later on. He had a better short-term memory than me. I would have forgot what it said instantly. Both sets were placed into the Ark of the Covenant, which was set in the Holy of Holies, the most sacred space in the Jewish temple. Alternate views on its fate include that it was taken by the Babylonians when Jerusalem was conquered in 587 BC, or that King Josiah hid the Ark in anticipation of the temple's destruction. Either way, it was eventually rediscovered by a swashbuckling American archaeologist and taken to a shadowy CIA warehouse somewhere. Stonehenge. Stonehenge is a megalithic complex located in Wiltshire, England. The most famous aspect of the site is a circle of large standing stones weighing from 25 to 50 tons each and placed between 26,000 and 24,000 BC. Other parts were found to be much older, such as the bank and ditch which surrounds the site, which has been dated to around 3100 BC. However, there is evidence that large-scale construction on the landscaping of the entire complex began much earlier, like 3,000 years earlier, around 6500 BC. And on top of that, researchers discovered 4 or possibly 5 large post holes underneath the tourist parking lot, which were originally dug to hold posts made of pine and date to 8000 BC. The culture that created Stonehenge left no written records, so there's no way to know what the site was originally used for. There's obviously an astrological intent, as the stones are aligned with the sunset of the winter solstice and the opposing sunrise of the summer solstice, and the discovery of cremated human remains from as early as 3000 BC, which aligns with the creation of the bank and ditch, seems to indicate that Stonehenge was being used as a place of burial and potentially for ritual purposes, burning the bodies of these people for reasons that were ritually significant. But ultimately, there's no way to know for sure what this place meant to the civilization that erected it. Moai. Moai, or Easter Island heads, are large stone figures carved by the Rapa Nui people of Easter Island between the years 1250 to 1500 AD, built to immortalize important ancestors of the community. They were created from a quarry near the foot of Teravaka, one of the island's 3 volcanoes, and then distributed throughout the island. Once again, the mode of transportation is heavily debated, and no one is sure how they did it. Originally, the theory was that logs were used to roll them to their destinations, but due to a lack of trees on the island, it was thought that this approach would be difficult to pull off. The current idea is that the statues were moved by waddling them back and forth using ropes while pulling them forward, which would explain why certain moai seem to have been left lying on the ground. The idea is that if they fell, the rope strategy wouldn't be able to get them upright again, so they'd just leave them there. The archaeologist Charles Love and his team experimented with this method and found that 25 men could move a statue 150 feet in 2 minutes. So yeah, this might have actually been how they did it. But again, there's no way to verify this because the Rapa Nui only have stories and myths of their history to go off of. They didn't write anything down. Would have been helpful. Rosetta Stone. The Rosetta Stone is a rock that was discovered in Rosetta, Egypt in 1799 during France's invasion of the country. It is a decree inscribed in stone which was issued by the Ptolemaic dynasty of Egypt in 196 BC, and this decree was inscribed on the stone in ancient hieroglyph, Demotic, which is another ancient Egyptian language variant, and then also in ancient Greek. And since ancient Greek is a well understood language, and the decree is almost exactly the same in all 3 languages, the ancient text could be deciphered using the Greek text as a reference, and this was the first ancient Egyptian text ever discovered with inscriptions that connected these 2 languages. So it was a massive deal in linguistics when this was found. It basically blew the doors open on understanding ancient hieroglyph, which had previously been lost to history after the ancient Egyptian temple priesthoods, who were basically the only ones who could still read hieroglyph, died out and Egypt was converted to Christianity. Other stones like the Rosetta Stone have since been found, but it was still a big deal when it was first discovered, and is still the most popular item in the British Museum. Grand Canyon. Gotta be on the list, but honestly, I don't really feel like talking about it, so I'm gonna skimp on it. When my family visited, we stayed for like 20 minutes, took some pics and left. Modern desensitization is absolutely a thing, and I'm affected but powerless against it until I abandon my screen, which I'm very seriously considering doing. It was amazing to look at, but there isn't much to it other than that it was carved by the Colorado River over 5 to 6 million years, which in turn has exposed almost 2 billion years of Earth's geological history, which I guess is pretty cool. Same goes for Mount Rushmore. It has to be here, but I'm so uninterested in it. I live in America, but all the big American landmarks just don't really interest me. Rage about it in the comments if I just dissed your favorite landmark and you want to let out some steam. Moving on. Petra. This is a whole-ass city carved from rock located in southern Jordan. It was settled by nomadic Arabs in the 4th century BC and began to flourish in the 1st century AD when its population peaked around 20,000. It's known for its Hellenistic architecture carved out of the sandstone rock that surrounds the area and is one of the 7 new wonders of the world. Some of the most well-known structures are the monastery, the urn tomb, which look at that is sick, the Great Temple, and the treasury near the entrance of the city, which is also worth mentioning. It's this narrow shaft you have to walk through to get to the city. Talk about landscape as a defense. The area was gradually abandoned over the course of the first millennia BC as sea trade routes became more important, and once again, Christianity swept through and the old religious areas were deserted as new Christian churches were built. Eventually, the whole place was abandoned and unknown to the Western world until 1812 when it was rediscovered by a Swiss geographer. Chicxulub impact. The Chicxulub impact crater was created by a massive asteroid that struck the Earth 66 million years ago, killing 3/4 of plant and animal species on Earth and all non-avian dinosaurs, which survived and eventually evolved into what we know today as boards. The asteroid in question was 6 miles in diameter, taller than Mount Everest, and spewed so much dust and debris into the atmosphere upon impact that it completely covered the Earth for around a decade. The strike point was in the ocean off the coast of the Yucatan Peninsula, near the town of Chicxulub in Mexico, and would have created mega tsunamis initially up to a mile high. In addition, expelled rock heated the Earth's surface and created wildfires that burned down 70% of trees on Earth. The existence of the impact was predicted by Nobel Prize-winning scientist Luis Alvarez and his son Walter Alvarez in the 70s, who noticed a thin layer of clay present all over the world at a layer of strata now called the Cretaceous-Paleogene boundary, in which iridium levels are 160 times higher than normal, the iridium from the blast still not having decayed over the 66 million year span. Later field research and fossil evidence at this boundary indicates a mass extinction of diverse animals, which basically confirms the impact theory. The crater was later recognized as an impact site after a long battle by geophysicist Glenn Penfield and others to get the scientific community to look at their findings in the area. They decided to name the crater after the nearby town of Chicxulub so that the scientists who denied them would have a hard time pronouncing the name, which is pretty funny. Code of Hammurabi. The Code of Hammurabi is a basalt stele dating to the year 1753 BC, and it is the most extensive and best preserved legal text from the ancient Near East. It's written in the ancient Mesopotamian language Akkadian by Hammurabi, the 6th king of the first dynasty of Babylon. It was rediscovered in 1901 at the archaeological site at Susa, an ancient city located in present-day Iran which had taken the stele as plunder 600 years after its creation. And since its discovery, versions of this same law set have been found at sites all over this area of the ancient world, so there's no doubt that it had wide-reaching influence. Atop the stele is Hammurabi seated before Shamash, the Babylonian god of the sun and also of justice. The king claims in the text to be given his authority by the gods in order to keep the strong from oppressing the weak, which was common in the ancient world for kings to try to claim that they were given their rule by some god in order to cement their status as divine and therefore unquestionable and immovable. There has been a lot of interest in how the laws of the code affected other Near Eastern laws, especially Mosaic law. For example, the eye for an eye law found in the Hebrew Bible is also present in the Code of Hammurabi, suggesting this may have been a well-known idea throughout the ancient Near East. Some major differences between this set of laws and our present-day laws are that people weren't equal before the law. Your position in society very much impacted the verdict you were given. Wait, I'm sorry, there's supposed to be a difference there. And also presumption of innocence didn't exist. Some of the laws dealt punishments for unsubstantiated claims. So yeah, not perfect, but these people existed 2,000 years before barbarians. Killing someone is on the same level as like lying to your parents. Killing someone is what you do with your friend after you're so bored that the two-player card games have got old. These people are basically cavemen, so the fact that these laws at all resemble modern legislation is nothing short of astounding. Rock of Gibraltar. The Rock of Gibraltar is a big-ass rock near the southernmost tip of Spain that for a long time represented the edge of the world, the final frontier before the Atlantic Ocean, which obviously no one knew it was over there yet. It was thousands of years before good old Columbo infected, massacred, and enslaved the people over there. Look at the bags under this guy's eyes, man. He knows what he's done. The rock was turned into a literal fortress by the British over the span of about 200 years, starting in 1704 with its capture from Spain, the Brits seeing it as an important way to control the Strait of Gibraltar, the entrance to the Mediterranean Sea, so that they could get a leg up on France in the whole mess of wars that was going on back then. The rock has around 34 miles of tunnel dug into it by the Brits, which are collectively known as the Tunnels of Gibraltar, capable of housing 16,000 men along with all the supplies, ammo, and such needed for a prolonged siege, which happened over a dozen times because the Spanish wanted that ish back. In the present day, about 40% of the island has been turned into a nature reserve and is home to around 300 macaques, which are an endangered species, as well as being a prominent migrating point for over 250,000 species of birds. I'm surprised the whole rock isn't white by now, because of the poop. Mariana Trench. The Mariana Trench is the deepest ocean trench on Earth, with the deepest point and therefore the deepest known point of Earth's seabed being in the Challenger Deep at the southern end of the trench. It is 35,000 feet down, which is basically Mount Everest plus 1.2 miles. Despite the water pressure down there being over 1,000 times the pressure at sea level, scientists, private companies, the Navy, and James Cameron have successfully sent many unmanned submersibles to the bottom of the trench, discovering a host of life forms that thrive even at those depths. Many of these creatures exhibit deep sea gigantism, which is the tendency for life forms to grow humongous due to higher concentrations of oxygen, less predators, and colder temperatures. People have also gone down to the bottom of Mariana and made it out in one piece. The first manned expedition to the bottom of the Challenger Deep was actually all the way back in 1960, in a mission conducted by the US Navy. We got to the very bottom of the ocean back before Kennedy was elected. That's pretty crazy. In 2019, Victor Vescovo set a new world record for human depth, which each time is just like 30 feet more than the last guy, as well as becoming the first person to dive to the bottom of the Challenger Deep more than once. And in July 2022, a submersible piloted by Vescovo brought Dawn Wright, who would become the first black woman to explore the Mariana Trench. Not sure why they specified that. Is it harder to get black women down there? Anyway, unfortunately, even at these depths, the ocean isn't safe to human pollution. That mission by Vescovo and their black woman found a beer bottle at the bottom of the Challenger Deep, as well as a a plastic bag and candy wrappers. And of the amphipods research caught and tested, which I think are these giant shrimp, 100% were found to have ingested microplastics. That's really sad, honestly. If that doesn't make you go green, I don't know what will. Olympus Mons. Moving on to a different planet, honestly, I'm about to. Olympus Mons on Mars is the tallest and widest mountain in our solar system. Actually, it's approximately tied for the tallest by Rhea Silva on the asteroid Vesta, but that's an asteroid, not a planet, which in my mind is not as cool. Like, the asteroid isn't even round. How do you differentiate a mountain from the curvature of whatever? In comparison with some of our mountains on Earth, Olympus Mons makes a hilarious mockery out of us. It's 2.5 miles tall and actually did erupt 25 million years ago. I'm imagining it spewing like green goo because of the aliens. Like, this is the level of maturity I'm still at. Atmospheric pressure at the summit is 12% of the pressure at the surface of Mars, which means you're basically in space. Imagine you could just like hike a mountain so tall that it puts you almost in space. Like, that is sick. The mountain is actually so big that if you were an observer at the base of it, there would be no possible way to see the entire mountain. Getting far enough away to try to see the whole thing would extend some of the mountain over the horizon line, so the curvature of the planet would obscure it from view. Similarly, if you were standing near the summit, you would be unable to know that you're on a volcano at all, because the slope below you would also extend over the horizon. Trippy stuff. The Philosopher's Stone. This is a mythical alchemical object capable of turning basic metals into gold and silver, as well as also for some reason being able to be used to make an elixir of life. Kinda seems tacked on there. As if being able to turn metal into gold isn't cool enough, they also had to make you immortal. Can it fix my hand size too? Can it fix these baby appendages? Just kidding, I know nothing can fix them. I'm done growing and I'll never be able to reach over an octave on the piano. I had to purchase size small weightlifting gloves the other day because my little sausage fingers keep slipping off the bar when I do pull-ups. I could do more, but I can't fucking hang long enough. Anyway, this was the most sought after goal in alchemy for hundreds of years. People went crazy over finding this formula. They picked apart every substance from plants and rocks to hair and urine, and the efforts to discover its secrets were known as the magnum opus, or the great work. Various alchemists believed different things about it, but a common story was that it was given to Adam by God, and that the knowledge of the formula was passed down Adam's line, and that's why they all lived 900 some odd years. The 16th century alchemist Paracelsus believed that the stone could be derived from the alkahest, which is supposedly the primary element from which all the other elements, earth, fire, water, and air, were derived. And the 17th century alchemist Thomas Vaughan wrote that the first matter of the stone is the very same with the first matter of all things. Some other secondary wonders the stone could allegedly achieve was create perpetually burning lamps, revive dead plants, transmutate common crystals into diamonds and precious minerals, create flexible glass, and perhaps most terrifyingly, create a clone or homunculus, which is a small artificial human being. Now I see why Voldemort wanted it so much. He wanted to create a mini-me to rule alongside him, and bring back his nose in the process. Clever bastard. Georgia Guidestones. The Georgia Guidestones were a monument that existed from 1980 until 2022 when they were blown up by a vandal, or maybe by the US government if you're a believer in what the inscriptions on the stones foretold. No, I'm just kidding, it was definitely a vandal. Sometimes referred to as America's Stonehenge, but by all accounts rudimentary by comparison. These granite monoliths foretold a future world collapse and were meant to provide guidance through such a cataclysm. The guy who made it went under the alias Robert C. Christian, or R.C. Christian, a brilliant allusion to the fact that he's a Christian, who was inspired when he took a trip to see Stonehenge and thought it was pretty cool, but it had no message to communicate. So literally because there was no written message on the stones, this fool comes to the conclusion that the builders of Stonehenge had no message, no statement at all to us in the future. So he set out to create a monument that would actually be good and have words on it. He was like, yeah, this Stonehenge, this is pretty impressive, but I can do better. It's funny because the guy he bought the giant slabs of stone from considered him quote unquote a nut, which he is. And so he upcharged him a ton from what the price for this work would have normally been. And RC Christian was like, aight, so he got totally scammed. In all, the project costed about $400,000 in today's money for a few large chunks of granite, one of the most abundant rocks on planet Earth. Emblazoned on the stones were instructions in various languages to do things like maintain humanity under 500 million in perpetual balance balance with nature, so already problematic. Rule passion, faith, tradition, and all things with tempered reason. Prize truth, beauty, love, seeking harmony with the infinite. And be not a cancer on the earth, leave room for nature, leave room for nature. He said that twice for some reason. In addition to the statement of many obvious things, and just being a stinking act of hubris, the Guidestones were criticized for promoting eugenics and genocide. The Guidestones also had a couple astronomical features like Stonehenge, but the level of complexity has been called an abacus to Stonehenge's computer. Oof. Fortunately, the monument was blown up in 2022 by a vandal, which may have been due to the conspiracy theories that R.C. Christian was a Satanist and part of a secret society. This is Georgia, so. On the west side of the monument, there was an inscription that stated that there would be a time capsule hidden under the structure, but there was a blank space left for dates next to that inscription, seeming to indicate that it hadn't been placed yet. And when county officials dug underneath the ruins after the explosion to check the ground, it was empty. So I guess R.C. forgot about that part. Yeah, this monument was just a dumpster fire from day one, in my opinion. Apparently there are plans to rebuild it, but I hope for the good of our national pride those plans fall through. Meteora. Besides being my favorite Linkin Park album, the Meteora of Thessaly in Greece are a collective rock formation that resides in between the town of Kalabaka and the village of Kastraki. Atop the enigmatic smooth stones are 24 separate Christian monasteries, built in the 14th century, 4 of which are still in use by monks. Below the pristine structures on the stone tops, I mean, look at these, they're epic. The caves in the vicinity of Meteora were actually inhabited by humans continuously from 50,000 to 5,000 years ago. The oldest example of a built structure is a 23,000-year-old stone wall blocking 2/3 of the entrance to Theopetra Cave, probably erected to keep out the cold since it was still the Ice Age at the time. In addition to its history, the destination is popular with runners, hikers, rock climbers, and anyone that wants to exercise in the literal land before time. Göbekli Tepe. The ancient ruins of Göbekli Tepe in modern Turkey is the remnant of a civilization that existed from around 9500 BC to 8000 BC, according to radiocarbon dating, so way back. Some of its structures are among the world's oldest known megaliths, and are actually the earliest evidence of permanent human settlement in the world, being set up at the end of the last ice age. This is in contrast to the hunter-gathering that took place before permanent settlements, moving the teepees around and all that. Many of the pillars at the site have carvings of humans and animals on them, which provide a window into understanding the prehistoric religion of these people. However, no definitive purpose has been found for the structures, but recent findings indicate that there was a settlement there complete with tools, a water supply complete with a rainwater harvesting system, extensive cereal processing, yeah, I guess Cheerios are that old, and buildings used for domestic life and as temples. This is all before pottery came on the scene, so the relics retrieved from the site are made of stone, with the tools usually being made of flint or even obsidian. So yes, these early humans were already capable of accessing the nether. Many of the animals depicted in the art on the pillars are predators, which may indicate that the stones were being used as totems to stave off the evil of animal attacks. However, they also could have just looked cool, which is the reason why I would carve a badass sculpture of a boar, but what do I know? Transitional fossils. There's a lot I could talk about when it comes to this topic, but this category of fossils sums up most of the more interesting ones in my opinion. Charles Darwin was quoted as saying that the lack of transitional fossils in the fossil record is, quote, the most obvious and gravest objection which can be urged against my theory. This refers to fossils that have common features of an ancestral group, as well as features from a derived descendant group. So basically an animal that is in the process of evolving from one distinct category of creature to another one. This would suggest by extension that all animals have a common ancestor, since any distinct classifications would have originated from previous different classifications. And since Darwin made that statement back in 1859, there have been extremely well-preserved fossils discovered that are literally a hybrid of two things. Maybe the best known example is the Archaeopteryx, which is a dinosaur bird, having traits of both theropod raptors and birds, as well as being the oldest known classifiable bird. The dinosaur traits include jaws with sharp teeth, 3 fingers with claws, a long bony tail, hyperextensible second toes known as the killing claws. Sick. All these are shared with the typical bird traits like feathers, a beak, and wings capable of flight. One of the coolest ones is the Ambulocetus, or walking whale, an early semi-aquatic cetacean, which is the genus that contains whales, dolphins, and porpoises. Fossils of this animal are always found in marine shallows. It walked on land but would have swam by flexing its spine up and down, exactly like a whale would but without the dorsal fin. Over time, it decided who needs the land. All the good food is in the sea, so it spent more time there, coming up for oxygen when it needed, kind of, like a whale. And eventually, because it kept swimming in its otter-like fashion, it didn't need its limbs as much, so those shrunk from lack of use. And soon enough, you got yourself a beautiful beluga. This happened with humans too, obviously, but that's freaky, and also animals are cooler, so I'm just gonna focus on those. Redifort impact. There has been a handful of times that world-altering meteors have struck the Earth, and as far as we know, this is the biggest meteor of them all. It struck an estimated 2.03 billion years ago in the Paleoproterozoic era, so this is before complex life, before the Cambrian explosion. But there were things like bacteria and single-celled eukaryotic organisms, which were in the process of evolving. The meteor was estimated to be 10 to 15 kilometers in diameter, so that's 6.9 to 9.3 miles across, and created a crater that could have been as big as 190 miles across. The Vredefort Dome, which is the central uplift that was created when the asteroid struck, is 62 to 75 miles in diameter and is located in the Free State province of South Africa, directly where the asteroid struck. Originally, scientists thought that the dome structure was a remnant of a volcanic eruption, but it wasn't until the mid-90s that they realized, oh crap, it was a humongous asteroid. Less is known about this impact than something like the Chicxulub impact, since it was such an insanely long time ago, but you can infer that everything I mentioned about Chicxulub applies to this impact and then some. Face on Mars. This entry refers to this 1976 photograph of the purported face on Mars, or space face, one of a grouping of small hills or knobs in a region of the planet known as Cydonia. It's attracted popular attention due to the striking similarity to a human face, and has even been used by some distinguished individuals in the scientific community as evidence of a ruined city on Mars, a lost alien civilization that, paired with other nearby rocks that resemble ruined pyramids, I mean, how could this not be true? Unfortunately, when you look at the rock from other angles, the face illusion goes away, suggesting that this is not in fact aliens building human faces to mess with us. This is one of the most famous examples of pareidolia, or the tendency to see meaningful patterns in random scenes, as well as apophenia, which is the tendency to see connections between things that are actually unrelated. Puma Punku. Okay, so this is one where I'm not gonna entirely rule out that it was aliens, because this is crazy. The ruins of Puma Punku and the archaeological site of Tiwanaku, Bolivia, are the leftovers of what has been described as one of the most unimaginably wondrous locations in the ancient world. Dated to around 536 AD, built by a people known as the Tiwanakans, it is a collection of plazas and ramps centered on a platform mound which the original complex was built on, made mostly of andesite and red sandstone. In the eastern part of Puma Punku, there is a terrace paved with stone blocks that are absolutely enormous, the largest of which is an estimated 144 tons. So we're talking almost twice as heavy as the largest stone in the Giza pyramids. How the hell did they set that thing? But that's not even the craziest part. In assembling the walls of Puma Punku, stones were crafted in a way in which they would fit together like a kind of puzzle, the joints and sockets being hewn into the rock. And the level of precision with which these holes and joints were carved, as well as the flawlessly smooth finish on these blocks, is akin to laser precision. To quote one historian, the sharp and precise 90-degree interior angles observed on various decorative motifs most likely were not made with hammerstones. No matter how fine the hammerstones point, it could never produce the crisp right interior angles seen on Tiwanaku stonework. The construction tools of the Tiwanakans, with perhaps the possible exception of hammerstones, remain essentially unknown and have yet to be discovered. Basically, no one has any idea how this could have happened. The indentations in these stones, there's no way the architects would have spent what would have had to be a ridiculous amount of time carving all these impossible right angles and crafting these perfect cubes with handheld tools. Plus, just like a rudimentary shot at carving the sockets and joints would still pretty much work, and they'd be in the walls, so like no one would see them, so it's not like it would matter. There's no reason why they would go this hard. There has to be an unknown method of achieving this product that is completely unknown to science. Or it was the little gray guys doing their thing with laser beams and anti-gravity fitting the stones into place. There's literally no other option. There's a lot of evidence to suggest that Puma Punku was the jewel of ancient Bolivia. Tiwanaku is actually derived from a word which means the stone in the center, and was believed in their belief system to have been the site where the world was created. By the aliens? I mean, there would have supposedly been brightly colored ceramic and fabric ornamentation, adornment with jewels and polished metal, elaborately dressed priests and citizens. It would have been party city, but at some point it was destroyed and looted, and because the Tiwanakans had no written language once again, there's no way to know who they were except by looking around at nearby societies that are more well known. But seeing this place in its heyday would have been, if I had a time machine, this might be the first place I would set the dial. Oumuamua. If there was a real-life version of the monolith from 2001: A Space Odyssey, this would be it. This strange tumbling rock, which is somewhere between 300 and 3,000 feet long, and between 115 and 548 feet thick. That's a wide margin, man. Might as well say you don't know how big it is at that point. Was detected as it passed by Earth about 85 times further away than the moon. And it was a landmark because it was the first object that we have detected that came from outside our solar system, which was confirmed due to its oblique trajectory and speed, both far exceeding any object orbiting the sun. The object is mysterious for multiple reasons. One is it didn't have a comma when appearing close to the sun, the usual cloud that forms because of the heat, and also, it was shown to have changed speeds, gaining speed, which may have been due to a push from solar radiation pressure. Also, it's more elongated than other comets with a cigar-like shape, which if you're into the history of UFO sightings at all, like me, that description might have rang a bell. Due to these and other properties, there is a slight possibility that it could have been artificial in nature, aka a UFO, and so organizations like SETI and others monitored it to see if it released any radio emissions, but found nothing. It is believed to have come roughly from the direction of the star Vega in the constellation of Lyra, taking about 600,000 years to get here. And there's a lot of theories of its origin, from it maybe being smashed off from a planet in a planetary collision, or it being the remnant of a disintegrated rogue comet, but there's no way to know for sure. Tunguska event. Imagine you're Russian. It's 7:17 in the morning in June 1903. You're just waking up, pouring your morning glass of vodka. You live out in the middle of absolute nowhere so you can drink in the morning and no one will know. You're getting ready for your day, and then suddenly, you start to get hot. So unbearably hot that it feels like your shirt is on fire and you tear it off. Then you hear a loud thump, and you get thrown a few meters backward to the ground. The ground starts to shake like you're in an earthquake, and your windows shatter, and there's sounds outside like 1,000 cannons firing in disunion. That was the experience of one witness to the Tunguska event, who was 40 miles away from the blast in eastern Siberia. We know now that he and others had been at the scene of the largest impact event in recorded human history, the result of a meteor 160 to 200 feet wide that broke apart a few miles above the ground, creating a blast equal to up to 50 megatons of TNT, leveling 830 square miles of trees and potentially killing up to 3 people according to eyewitnesses. 3 deaths is sad, but the outcome of the Tunguska event could have been far worse if it happened in a populated area. The bomb dropped on Hiroshima wasn't even equivalent to 1 megaton of TNT, to put this in perspective. Antikythera mechanism. This is an artifact retrieved in 1901 from a shipwreck off the coast of the Greek island Antikythera, and has been variously dated to around 87 BC, between 150 and 100 BC, or even as early as 205 BC. Whatever the actual date was, pretty much everyone agrees that it was before Christ, and it is a piece of an analog computer. No, I'm not kidding. Even though this steampunk-looking thing looks like it could have come from a modern clock, and here's a recreation of what it originally looked like. It is in fact over 2,000 years old. Originally made from bronze and wood, but since corroded into mineral, the machine would have had the ability to predict astronomical positions of stars and planets decades in advance, track the phases of the moon, take into account the retrograde motion of the moon and Mars and the elliptical orbits of planets, as well as track the cycle of the ancient Olympic Games. So it was a star clock / sports calendar apparently. The complexity is comparable to 14th century astronomical clocks, and is more proof that the destruction of the Library of Alexandria royally screwed over humanity and set us back literal thousands of years. There is evidence that this engineering knowledge was spread to countries outside of Greece too, as recovered manuscripts from the ancient Byzantine and Islamic areas of the world have revealed blueprints for similar machines, although not as complex. The Greek scientists were just on another level, and if we hadn't lost a large chunk of the knowledge they had back then, who knows how technologically advanced we'd be. The Black Stone. This is a sacred object located in the Islamic holy city of Mecca. Every year during the Hajj, which is the annual Islamic pilgrimage, it is customary for pilgrims to kiss the stone while raising their hands toward it and repeating Takbir, or God is greatest. And here is Muhammad Ali kissing it in 1972. This seems pretty sacred to Muslims, so I'm gonna refrain from making sanitation-related jokes. Muslims believe it was originally white, but turned black because of the sins of the people that kissed it, and that touching it is an expiation for sin, pretty much gets rid of it. it. It has been desecrated a few times. It was stolen by the Karmatians, but then allegedly returned 23 years later, as the leader who stole it, Abu Tahir, was said to have been afflicted by sores and eaten alive by worms. All that collective sin in the rock is probably what did it. After the retrieval, they stuck the stone in this wall called the Kaaba, so it couldn't get stolen again. There's a lot of origin stories for the stone, like it was placed in the original Kaaba by Adam, then lost during the flood until Abraham found it after the angel Gabriel told him where it was. Another legend is that it was originally an actual angel that was supposed to guard Adam in the Garden of Eden, but then was turned into the stone because it was dilly-dallying while Adam ate the fruit, which I guess it was supposed to protect him from. The stone has been scientifically studied and its origin remains speculative. It could be an agate, a basalt stone, a piece of natural glass, or even a meteorite, although that hypothesis is doubtful. As far as I can tell, they haven't ruled out that it's a behelit, so we have to keep that theory on the table. Whatever it is, it's getting the luxury treatment as a deified object and is visited by millions every year. Missing moon rocks. This is a whole rabbit hole in and of itself, but I'll try to mention all the main points. After the Apollo 11 and Apollo 17 moon missions, the Nixon administration gave out a total of 270 moon rocks to the US states and the nations of the world. And of that original number, 180 are now unaccounted for. And so tracking the locations of these missing moon rocks has become sort of like the ultimate scavenger hunt for researchers and hobbyists. The rocks are each worth millions of dollars, so there's a high incentive to steal them and sell them on the black market. That was the fate of many of the moon rocks which might never be found, but the ones that have been recovered sometimes have some pretty bizarre stories. For example, the Nicaragua Apollo 11 moon rock that was given to then Nicaraguan President Anastasio Somoza was purportedly pilfered, so stolen in small amounts at a time, by a Costa Rican mercenary, traded to a Baptist minister for unknown items, then sold to a Las Vegas casino mogul who displayed them at his cafe called the Moon Rock Cafe, before he got too paranoid and stuffed them in a safety deposit box. These rocks were given back to Nicaragua in November 2012, probably after investigators heard about the Moon Rock Cafe and that people had seen the rocks there, I'm guessing. The Alaska moon rocks are another weird one. Apparently there was a fire at the museum it was being kept and it burned the place to the ground, and a guy named Coleman Anderson, who would later be a crab fishing captain who was on the show Deadliest Catch, but was a kid at the time. This kid future crab fisher went scrounging through the rubble of the museum to see if there was anything worth keeping, found the moon rocks, and held them for years, and then eventually tried to file a lawsuit against the state of Alaska, fighting for ownership of the moon rocks, at which point they said hell no, told him to give back the rocks, and then he returned them to the state on December 7th, 2012. So yeah, a lot of weird stuff. There have been multiple incidents of people selling counterfeit moon rocks, so much so that NASA started a sting operation called Operation Lunar Eclipse to shut these people down, as well as find the real rocks, which they did in the case of the Honduras Apollo 17 moon rock, which they had to buy back for $5 million, but they just asked billionaire Ross Perot to put up the money and he did. No sweat to him. Anyway, there's way too much info about this for me to cover here, but it's a fun rabbit hole to check out if you ever have the time. Murchison meteorite. This is a meteorite that fell in 1969 near Murchison, Victoria in Australia. That is special because it contains the oldest minerals ever found, period. They are silicon carbide particles, which have been determined to be 7 billion years old, about 2.5 billion years older than the Earth, the Sun, and the solar system. For scientific reasons beyond my understanding, the meteorite shows evidence that it interacted with water-rich fluids when it was still attached to its parent body. Also, it contains many organic compounds like amino acids, which suggest an extraterrestrial origin for the building blocks of life in early solar system bodies. Billions of years of evolution and the mystery of life unfolding has brought us to the present day, and we are the culmination of this magnificent process, the recipients who appreciate and seek to understand all that it took for us to reach Troll Wall. The Troll Wall in Norway is this epic-looking wall of rock that runs off of the Trolltimdin, or Troll Peak, and is the tallest vertical rock face in Europe, 3,600 feet tall from the base to its highest point. It's so steep that the summit ridge overhangs the base of the wall by 160 feet at one point. This has made it a popular spot for base jumpers. Carl Bonisch, the father of base jumping, was killed jumping off part of the wall called the Stabben Pinnacle. I'm not gonna laugh at this is sad. The day after he broke the Guinness World Record for highest base jump in a jump he did with his wife Jean. 2 days after Carl died, his wife went and did another jump. Must have been a close relationship they had. Due to this and other deaths, the wall has been illegal to base jump from since 1986. But you know these daredevils, they ain't gonna listen to no rules, so every summer base jumpers still come from around the world to jump there and usually have enough time to evade police. The wall is also a popular place for climbers. It was free climbed Alex Honnold style in 1979 by 2 Norwegian guys, and in 2018 Killen Jornet was the first person to ski down the wall. I'm assuming all of this is illegal too, but hey, when the Red Bull crew is there filming, paying off the cops, you know, who needs to intervene? Lion Rock. Lion Rock is a well-known landmark if you're from Hong Kong. It's a mountain peak overlooking the city that bears striking resemblance to a crouching lion, especially from certain angles. At first I thought it was kind of a stretch, but then I saw the second peak behind the head, which I guess is like the lion's ass. It even looks like it has a tail from this angle, so yeah, pretty cool. It has become a symbol of the city, and there is a hiking trail that reaches the summit. However, the trail is known to be dangerous, and there are numerous signs placed by the government warning hikers of the risk. There are a few parts of the trail that have steep drop-offs with no barrier fencing, which can be extremely hazardous on wet days. There's also wild monkeys in the area that will jump you and steal your stuff, as well as pit vipers. Why are people trying to hike this, man? Due to these obstacles, there have been a number of deaths on the trail, mostly from falling off cliffs, taking pics and losing balance and then falling off cliffs, getting lost off the trail and then falling off a cliff, and a number of people have fallen off the lion head itself. So please, unless you're into risking everything, don't hike this trail if you ever visit Hong Kong. This lion is bloodthirsty. Coral Castle. Coral Castle is a privately operated tourist attraction in Florida, sometimes called Florida's Stonehenge. It was built and worked on by a single person, Latvian-American Edward Leedskalnin, from 1923 to his death in 1951. The castle is composed of approximately 100 tons of limestone sculptures, not coral as it was popularly thought, the heaviest of which is 30 tons. No one knows how he moved the stones into their places. Some meddling kids in the area claim to have seen Edward levitating the stones into place, and there were rumors that he used reverse magnetism or had supernatural abilities. When asked how he did it, Leedskalnin gave vague answers like, "It's not difficult if you know how," and claimed that he had found the hidden knowledge of how the Giza pyramids were constructed. And when asked why he made the sculptures, he would always give the answer that it was for his Sweet 16, which some people think is a relationship he may have had or wanted to have, and is also the inspiration behind the Billy Idol song Sweet 16. Amazingly, in 1936, when Leedskalnin was almost 50, he decided to move to a new address in Miami, which is the current location. The first one was 10 miles away in Florida City, and he took the rocks with him. He spent 3 years moving the rocks, and somehow, no one saw and decided to document how this guy was doing this. One of the most famous attractions at the castle was a 9-ton door to a gate on the property. The door was carved so finely that it fit within a 1/4 inch of the walls, and opened so smoothly that a child could open it with a push of a finger. It was a total mystery for decades until it stopped working in 1986. It took 6 men and a crane to remove the rock, but when it was removed, they found out how Leedskalnin had crafted it. There was a hole drilled through the middle of the door in which a metal shaft had been inserted, and the rock was resting on an old truck bearing which had rusted, so that's why the door wasn't turning. Yep, that's it. They set the rock back in place with a new bearing and shaft, but of course, it didn't turn with the same magic that it once did. Coral Castle remains a popular tourist attraction, and many books, magazines, and TV programs have been made attempting to decipher how it could have been built. 99942 Apophis. If you were around in the mid-2000s and not a child like I was, you might remember a brief period where scientists thought a cataclysmic asteroid strike was a real possibility. In December 2004, it was determined that an asteroid scarily nicknamed Apophis had a 2.7% probability of striking the Earth on April 13th, 2029. This thing was 1,480 feet long and 560 feet wide, and its impact power would have been equivalent to 1,200 megatons of TNT. Remember, the bomb dropped on Hiroshima was less than 1 megaton, and the biggest nuclear bomb ever detonated, the Tsar Bomba, was 50 megatons. This would have been an explosion over 60 times larger than that. A path of potential collision points was created by scientists, and yeah, it wasn't looking good. Across the northern Atlantic, directly through Europe, through the Middle East down into Pakistan and India, some of the most densely populated areas of the world, then toward Nepal, southern China territory. Estimates of a death toll if the asteroid landed in a populated area were anywhere upwards of 10 million, and if it landed in the ocean, the resulting tsunamis would stretch thousands of miles inland on continents all over the world. However, despite the catastrophic damage and untold deaths, the asteroid would have been unlikely to have lasting global effects such as an impact winter, when the sky is totally blotted out for an extended period of years. Very fortunately, by 2006 they had completely eliminated the possibility of collision with Earth. But this is how close it's gonna get in 2029. Yeah, almost took out the moon there too. Let's see that again from a closer angle. I thank God every day for the privilege of life. For a while, scientists thought that there was a possibility Apophis would return for round 2 in the future, since its orbit around the sun gets scarily close to Earth, but luckily that has also now been entirely ruled out. Tomorrow your cereal will taste better than it has ever tasted before. Stone spheres of Costa Rica. This is a group of about 300 petrospheres, or man-made stone balls, that reside in Costa Rica, commonly called Diquis spheres, after the extinct Diquis culture scholars attribute to their creation. They date from around 600 AD to after 1000. These things are really round. Some of them look like small planets. According to archaeologists, they could be representative of planets or be inspired by the stages of the sun and moon, and likely had symbolic and spiritual significance. What if they just wanted to make cool-looking balls? Is that off the table? They were discovered in the 1930s by the United Fruit Company, an American enterprise, who were clearing the jungles to make way for banana plantations. Workers destroyed some of them with the heavy equipment, and some even blew them up with dynamite, thinking there might be treasure in them. Through those events, some of the spheres were shattered, but the rest have since been preserved and declared a national symbol of Costa Rica. Westford Night. This is a feature on a rock variously described as a carving, a natural feature, or a combination of both, located in Westford, Massachusetts. It has been interpreted by some as a depiction of an English knight and was first mentioned in print in 1874. Some see it as evidence of pre-Columbian contact with the West, the most popular interpretation being that the rock depicts a fallen member of the party of Henry Sinclair, who some believe made a voyage to the New World in 1398, 100 years before Columbus. Specifically, it has been suggested that the knight is Sir James Gunn, who reportedly traveled with Sinclair. Of course, there's no evidence for any of this. Many scholars who have observed the feature don't even think they can see a knight, much less be able to link it to a specific historical figure. Literally, a kid from the colonial days could have carved this, or anyone could have, if it even is a carving. So yeah, not solid evidence for a pre-Columbus successful voyage to America, but a cool idea nonetheless. Bet's Mystery Sphere. This is technically not a rock, it's metal, but it's a fun topic, so I'm going to talk about it nonetheless. The Bet's Mystery Sphere is an 8-inch wide metal object weighing about 22 pounds, discovered by the Betts family of Fort George Island, Florida. The family of 3, Antoine, Jerry, and son Terry, came across it in 1974 after investigating a brush fire near their house, and thinking it might be an artifact, potentially a cannonball left by Spanish conquistadors. They took it home with them. It wasn't long before the sphere started to exhibit strange properties. Terry was playing guitar when the orb allegedly started to react to the sound, making what they described as a throbbing noise. Later they noticed the sphere starting to roll around on its own and even stop and then change direction. In an unprovoked act of violence, Terry came down upon the sphere with a hammer, and he stated that it reverberated when he did this. Stirring stuff. He also found that it would move after being shaken and placed on the ground. After continuing to move on its own and follow people around the house, they imprisoned it in the trunk of their car, only taking it out to show off to friends occasionally. The sphere was examined by scientists at a conference sponsored by the National Enquirer. They reported it was made of stainless steel. News of the sphere even made it to the US Navy, who claimed it was just a ball bearing used in the piping system of some chemical plant. So much irritation in that statement. Upon later analysis in 2012 by Skeptoid magazine, it was determined that the sphere was probably a ball check valve produced by the Bell and Howell Company, since the sphere's size, weight, and composition exactly matched the ball check valves they manufactured. The weird rolling around on its own was explained by the floors in the Betts' house, which was an old house with uneven stone floors. Even an unnoticeable imbalance would cause the sphere to roll because it was almost perfectly round. And the Skeptoid article even found the potential origin of the object. An artist named James Durling Jones claimed to have loaded ball check valves into his trunk's luggage rack for use in his scrap metal sculptures and driven through the area the Bettses lived in 1971. And he said that he lost a few of the ball check valves after they rolled off the rack while he was on the road. So imagine loading scrap metal into your truck for your art project, hitting a pothole on the road and losing some of it, and then accidentally creating a conspiracy theory that will outlive you and become more famous than your entire life and legacy. Let's move on before I can realize the implications of that. Durupinar Site. This is a limestone geological formation located on Mount Tendurek in Turkey and near Mount Ararat, which is mentioned in the Bible as the place that Noah's Ark landed after the flood. According to local experts, heavy rain combined with 3 earthquakes exposed the formation on May 19, 1948. When it was examined by an American team in 1985 that included U.S. Marine and salvage expert David Fassold, Fassold found that it was a shipwreck. Ground penetration radar revealed an internal formation that measured 538 feet, close to the 515 feet or 300 cubits mentioned as the size of the ark in the Bible, if the ancient Egyptian cubit of 20.62 inches is used. Later measurements by others showed it to be 515 feet, exactly the length of the biblical ark. As far as the issue of the ark seemingly landing on the wrong mountain, Mount Tendurek, not Mount Ararat, the biblical narrative actually states that the ark landed in the mountains of Ararat, not a specific mountain, so that kinda irons that out. David Fassold wrote a book on the findings but then started to doubt his claims in the 90s, writing a paper with geologist Lawrence Collins which claimed that all the supposed remnants of the ark were instead natural formations composed of local rocks. Under sworn testimony in an Australian court, Fassold called his former ideas absolute BS. However, before his death, he went back on the original claims, telling friends and his biographer June Dawes that the site had too much going for it and was convinced that it was the fossilized remains of the ark. In 2011, the Grand National Assembly of Turkey granted jurisdiction over works based on the Noah's Ark site, specifically to a board of directors at one of their universities. So they scooped it up basically. They control the narrative now. Kayak Tio Pagoda. Also known as Golden Rock, this small precarious-looking pagoda is a well-known Buddhist pilgrimage site in Myanmar. It's covered in gold leaves pasted on by worshippers who revere it as a symbol of balance. Gold leaves are thin sheets of gold, by the way, not actual leaves. The gold leaves are pasted from the visitor area. They're not crawling all over this thing like Spider-Man like I was thinking. Legend has it that the rock balances on a strand of the Buddha's hair, which was given to the celestial king who placed the rock with his supernatural powers. And it is the strand of hair placed beneath the rock's resting place that keeps it from falling. The trail leading to the base of Mount Kyaiktiyo to the rock is a sacred path for Buddhist monks, and there are other precarious boulders placed along the trail which follows the central motif. The main square at the top of the mountain includes restaurants, gift shops, and guest houses. At night, candles are lit and meditation and offerings to the Buddha continue as the rock gleams different shades from dawn till dusk. So if you're looking for a fun, active, and spiritual getaway, this pagoda in Myanmar might be right for you. Klerksdorp Spheres. Klerksdorp spheres are small rocks recovered from 3-billion-year-old pyrophyllite deposits near Ottosdal, South Africa. Their odd spherical shape immediately raises questions about their origin, and as per usual, there have been many pseudoscientific articles published which paint these as out-of-place artifacts that could have only been manufactured by unknown intelligent beings. But according to scientists, there is likely a natural explanation. The info on this subject is shrouded in geology jargon, but from what I could grasp, the objects were compressed in volcanic deposits 3 billion years ago due to having a finer grain than the surrounding sediments, making them less porous, which inhibited gas or liquids from getting into the regions they were being formed. And through a slow lamination process, they were hardened into these rocks. That might be totally off, but that was the best I could come up with. This is an amateur YouTube video, not Nova Science now. Similar looking objects have been found in Utah, New York, and Australia, although not as fine as the Klerksdorp ones.
You're not gonna find curves this fine outside of Klerksdorp, honey.
This pretty much proves that they are natural formations and not the product of intelligent designers who somehow left nothing but their round rocks behind just to mess with us. Deniliquin multiple ring feature. This is maybe the most exciting entry on this whole list, and if it is verified will alter what we know about the history of our planet. The Deniliquin multiple ring feature is a buried structure in Southeast Australia named after the nearby town of Deniliquin. Its characteristics suggest that it could be an asteroid impact ring 520 kilometers or 320 miles in diameter, which would make it the largest one on Earth over the Vredefort impact I discussed earlier. In fact, it would absolutely dwarf it, Vredefort being a little larger than half the size of Deniliquin. And this isn't some archaic rock that hit Earth early on in its history. This is relatively recent, about 514 to 427 million years ago in the late Ordovician. At this time, there would have been no land animals, but the oceans would have been teeming with early brachiopods, cephalopods, and other things you would probably see on a frickin' DMT trip. The asteroid associated with this impact is thought to have potentially triggered the late Ordovician glaciation, which lasted 4.1 million years, killing off around 85% of species species. Needless to say, the asteroid that created a 1.4 million year impact winter would have been terrifyingly massive. Chicxulav's impact winter was 10 years. 10. Think about that. And the multiple ring basin is a feature that is only created by the biggest asteroids, where the asteroid not only creates one crater but extra rings that ripple outward. The Vredefort impact originally had one, but it was lost due to erosion. But this is confirmed to have multiple, probably even more than 2, but that remains to be seen. As of 2018, there are 38 confirmed impact structures, which makes this basically a thing, and still more are likely to be classified as impact ones. However, more fieldwork and drilling is still required to verify completely that this is what happened. So yeah, this is cutting edge science. Only the best content on this channel. It'll be interesting to see in a few years what scientists have to say and how much of a beefcake this asteroid may have actually been. Baltic Sea Anomaly. The Baltic Sea Anomaly is a sonar image captured by the Swedish OceanX diving team while hunting for treasure in the northern Baltic Sea in June 2011. It seems to show an object about 200 feet in diameter resting on the seafloor. Following a publishing in the UK tabloids, a number of theories were popularized, including that this was a photo of a sunken UFO and that there was what looked like a runway underneath the UFO. Scientists have variously described the object as some sort of rock outcrop, sediment dropped from a fishing trawler, or even a school of fish. However, nobody really knows what this is. Goran Ekberg, a marine archaeologist from the Maritime Museum in Stockholm, is quoted as saying, "A natural geologic formation can't be ruled out. I agree the finding looks weird since it's completely circular, but nature has produced stranger things than that." Everyone agrees that the image is bizarre, and so the OceanX team visited the object and took some samples from the surrounding materials, but not the object itself for some reason. And after announcements that OceanX was planning on taking wealthy tourists to the site, many questioned whether or not they were keeping their findings hush-hush just to make some green. The team also mentioned in 2019 that there might be another expedition via a TV production in which they are involved, so they're really trying to milk this for all it's worth. Other than the one expedition, there haven't been any other visits to the site, so the object remains unidentified. I'm leaning toward it being something man-made that sunk, just because of the shape. I mean, how many perfectly round things that are that big can you find in the ocean? But I guess for now the question will remain unanswered. Lake Winnipesaukee Mystery Stone. This is a mysterious artifact dug up in Meredith, New Hampshire, near Lake Winnipesaukee. It's a smooth, egg-shaped stone about 4 inches tall and 2.5 inches thick, and its age, purpose, and origin are completely unknown. It was allegedly found in 1872 by some workers digging a hole for a fence post, and was eventually placed in the Museum of New Hampshire History. There are what look to be Native American carvings covering it. One side shows an ear of corn, some figures, various abstract symbols like a moon, inverted arrows, and a spiral. Then the front side is taken up by this unimpressed face. A hole has been bored vertically through it as well, and the scratches around the bottom hole suggest it was placed on a metal shaft and removed several times. Like I said, no one knows what the hell this thing is. Some theories are that it could have commemorated a treaty between Native American tribes, or that it's a thunderstone, an amulet meant to provide protection to a person by evolving their Eevee into a Jolteon. The holes were examined by a state archaeologist who claimed that they looked like they've been drilled with power tools. However, as we've seen, you can't underestimate the skill of ancient craftsmen. They're not as clueless as we often think. But yeah, until we get more context as to what objects like these may have represented in past Native American cultures, this entry will likely remain a total mystery. Sabu Disc. No, this is not a piece of a dismantled Tesla. This came from a 5,000-year-old Egyptian tomb. Found in 1936 in a royal burial ground in Giza, Egypt, the Sabu Disc is an artifact that dates to the first dynasty of ancient Egypt, around 3000 to 2800 BC. Yes, that far back, and resembles a steering wheel with 3 very wide spokes. It was discovered next to the skeleton of its owner, a member of Egyptian nobility called Sabu, and placed centrally in his burial chamber, suggesting that it was of great importance. Originally, it was thought to be some sort of gigantic oil lamp. However, modern studies were done at the Airbus Research Center, yes, the aircraft manufacturer, where copies of the object were made using a 3D printer, and the researchers found that the copies had aerodynamic properties and could serve as flying discs. Although due to their rotational symmetry, specific use as a propeller or turbine would not be possible. And because the production of a metal object shaped like the Sabu disc would be easy, but the production would be very complex if it were to be hewn from rock like this object was, it has been thought that the disc may have been a stone imitation of an original metal object. So is this an ancient Egyptian stone imitation of a flying metal disc? There's actually a serious possibility that that is the case. The Airbus researchers also found that the object could function as an oil lamp though, so you never know. Yonaguni Monument. The Yonaguni Monument is a submerged rock formation that resides off Yonaguni, the southernmost of the Japanese island chain that stretches from Kyushu, Japan to Taiwan. It was discovered by divers in 1986 who originally came to view hammerhead sharks, but then noticed that some of the seabed formations below them resembled architectural structures. Upon revisiting the formation, researchers from the University of the Ryukyus determined that they were indeed architectural and man-made. However, these views are generally held as pseudoscientific. American geologists visited the monument and believe the platforms to be fractured rock from earthquakes, as those are common in the area, and the quote-unquote drawings referenced by the Ryukyus team to be natural scratches. Other research teams have backed up the natural processes theory, saying that the smooth angular look could be created by weathering and erosion acting on the disjointed sandstone. However, supporters of the artificial construction theory say that such a concentration of peculiar formations is highly unlikely, and point to the lack of loose, broken-off blocks, which would be expected if earthquakes had caused the fracturing. Some still believe that this is a remnant of a lost Japanese civilization that may have existed 2,000 to 3,000 years ago, which may have been submerged by tectonic activity and lost to time. However, the Japanese government doesn't recognize the monument as a cultural artifact, and is likely not going to carry out any research on the site anytime soon, so we may never know if these mysterious features have a story to tell. Artificially petrified corpses. You may be asking, artificially petrified? How can a corpse be artificially petrified? How can he be nearly headless? Let me tell you, you annoying little girl. Nobody knows. Except this guy. Girolamo Sagato was an Italian jack-of-all-trades, anatomist, a cartographer, an Egyptologist, and a naturalist. However, he's best known for his work with cadavers and human mummification. In 1818, he went on an archaeological expedition to Egypt, where he became an expert in mummification techniques. Upon his return to Florence in 1823, he had apparently mastered a technique similar to mummification, except different. While normal mummification involves simply removing water from cadavers, Sagato's method consisted of what appears to be mineralization or petrification. His technique allowed him to save the original colors and features of a person, besides their elasticity. Basically, he was turning these corpses into rocks, perfectly perfecting their liveliness and the color that they had when they were alive, and nobody knew how he was doing it. Word soon spread that Sagato had acquired knowledge of Egyptian magic, and hampered by a society that saw all purported magic as demonic, Sagato was prompted to destroy his notes and take to the grave his secret of artificial petrification. Today, the remains Sagato petrified can be found in the Museum of the Department of Anatomy in Florence. He petrified snakes, frogs, toads, birds, and parts of the human body, preserving color and shape. Again, nobody has still figured out how he was doing this. It sounds made up, but due to all the surviving examples, it is confirmed to be true. This is one of those lost secrets that defies modern understanding, the other famous one being Greek fire, which I'm sure I'll cover at some point. Honestly, they gotta figure out how he was doing this so we can start preserving our loved ones and keeping them looking the way they used to. Imagine you could keep grandma around looking the same as she did. She may be made of rock now and forever giving you that stony gaze, but still. It'd be sort of like having a pet rock instead of a real pet, which is even better than real life, honestly. They can't be annoying to take care of or poop around the house. You won't have to worry about granny taking a dump behind the sofa anymore. This one is bizarre. I couldn't believe it was real when I read it, but truth is stranger than fiction. 53319 1999 JM8. The scariest rock on our list is also the most obscure. Discovered on May 13th, 1999, this is the largest known potentially hazardous near-Earth asteroid, being about 4 miles or 7 kilometers in diameter. Not quite as large as Chicxulub, which was 6 miles wide, but still world-ending to be sure. It has passed by Earth closer than 0.2 AU 5 times in the last century. AU meaning astronomical unit, which is the mean distance from Earth to the Sun. So it has passed within 20% of the distance to the Sun 5 times in the last century. Look at these pictures, dude. I'm gonna be seeing that in my nightmares. It orbits the Sun once every 4 years and 6 months, and each time is a potential hazard for Earth. Luckily, the closest approach in the next 100 years will be in 2075 at 0.256 AU away, so not even within 0.2 at all like last century. However, in 2137, it will pass within 0.076 AU, which is about 7.1 million miles away from Earth. Scarily close. That's around 30 times further away than the moon. I did the calculation to try to ease my mind. It didn't work. Yeah, I think I've found the scariest rock in the universe right now, at least in relation to human existence. If at any point a big near-Earth asteroid becomes a danger like Apophis was in the mid-2000s, then that will become the scariest one. But I think right now, 1999 JM8 takes the cake. Thank you for watching. If you like this video, please like and subscribe, and I'll see y'all in the next iceberg. Peace.